Hey guys, so I'm here to do my review and swatch video for the Makeup Forever 30 Years, 30 Colors, 30 Artists collaboration palette, which is absolutely divine. It is a makeup palette with 30 colors and it was made in collaboration with 30 celebrity makeup artists. And we're gonna just jump right into the review because I'm really excited to share this with you, and I know you guys have been looking forward to this review, so let's just jump right into it. So before I get started talking about the palette and doing the overall review, I'm just gonna let you know that the swatches are towards the end of the video. I know a lot of people are interested in that, so if that's what you're here for, click ahead towards the end of the video and I'll try to leave an annotation to the exact time that you can check it out, and I'll leave a link below as well to the time of the swatches. So this palette is in celebration of Makeup Forever's 30-year anniversary, and it features 30 of their brand new reformulated shades. In case you didn't know, Makeup Forever reformulated their entire eyeshadow range. So we're talking about 210, yes, 210 brand new eyeshadows that they're reformulated, they're brand spanking new, they're new colors, they're new finishes, just everything about the whole range has been redone. And this palette actually features 30 shades that were selected by 30 artists, you know, based on whatever inspired them. So we're gonna go through these shades and you're just gonna absolutely love this. And by the way, this palette is limited edition, so definitely grab it while you can, because once it's gone, it's pretty much gone. So I know you're wondering, how much does this palette cost anyway? It seems very pricey, and it is. It is $250 for the palette, which you're thinking, oh my god, that is so much. But if you calculate it, it means each eyeshadow, there are 30 in the palette, each eyeshadow works out to $8.33 for each. So you're really getting a bargain here. You're really saving a lot on a single eyeshadow. Single eyeshadows from Makeup Forever retail for $21, yes, $21. So you're really getting a steal here if you buy this palette, because you're getting 30 and each of them are $8.33. And as far as how that relates to other eyeshadows on the market, if you think of Makeup Forever, it's really kind of mid-range in the market, and the prices actually jive with other brands, similar brands on the market like Urban Decay, Stila, Too Faced. And the real cincher for the prices, even though you're paying $21, which is really $8 in the actual palette, the size of the eyeshadows is about almost 50% more than the average eyeshadow on the market. I'm using a MAC eyeshadow for reference, which contains 0.05 ounces, right? Makeup Forever contains 0.07. So you're really getting a larger eyeshadow for the price, and it actually works out to be a better value. So while the overall cost of the palette seems really steep, you're actually getting quite a bargain, because you're getting 30 full-size eyeshadows. Mind you, these are large-size eyeshadows for $8.33 each, which works out to a serious steal. So of course, one of the first things I want to go through is the actual packaging of the palette itself. And I must mention that when my shipment came from Sephora online, it came so well packaged that I was truly impressed. There was a large shipping box that it came in that was padded with insulating bubble wrap. And then within the box was another shipping box. So there was a separate box within this overall large box. And then within that smaller box, there was the palette that's included. It's of course within this box itself. And that box was wrapped in bubble wrap, like layers of bubble wrap, to ensure that there was no damage to the palette. So I must commend Sephora for taking care in packaging this palette and ensuring that we didn't have like smashed eyeshadows everywhere. It was really well insulated and packaged with care, so thumbs up to Sephora for taking that much effort into ensuring that there was no damage to the palette, because it is an expensive purchase. So the palette comes in this overall box, and it's a nice design. It has the eyeshadow colors all over it, and on the back you'll have the eyeshadow ingredients, and they make sure to put the eyeshadows as well as the blush colors, the ingredients separately. And then of course the little spiel about the 30-year anniversary of Makeup Forever and what this palette is all about. So the actual palette itself comes in this faux leather black box, and I'm saying faux leather because I don't truly believe that they would make this true leather, and if it was, they would have printed it somewhere on the packaging. So it's this faux leather black case with the Makeup Forever logo on the front, and everything else about the palette on the outside is very plain. And then the box opens up similar to a jewelry box with a little lid. There is no hinge, so it just kind of flops around. There is no true securement here, so I'm sure over time that's going to wear down. Inside the box, you'll see the signatures of the 30 makeup artists that were involved with the creation of this palette. And then on top, you have a little pamphlet that tells you all the colors and the artist inspirations, the color numbers, and all that good stuff. Just a lot of information about the collaboration for this palette itself. So that's a nice pamphlet to have. And also you get a little sheet included which has the various palette, the various eyeshadow numbers listed out on this card. So this is a card that you want to keep handy if you're interested in keeping track of the eyeshadow numbers. Then once you remove all those inserts, there's a little plastic tray. I don't know what this is for other than keeping the little pamphlet on top and securing the eyeshadows beneath. But I removed that, and then underneath you'll see that there's this foam, this black foam thin layer with a little thumb hole for you to remove. And on top, the first layer is the smoky eyeshadow layer, and it has little tabs for you to remove it. So you see little ribbons that you pull on to remove that part, so it removes just like that. It's a very thin overall little palette. And then underneath again you'll have another foam layer with the thumb pull out, and this layer here would be the neutral palette with the neutral shades. And again, you lift it up with the little ribbon inserts. And then again, underneath another foam protector. Lift that one up, and you have the artistic shades underneath. So all the bright colors, all the bold shades. Now, the biggest problem I have with this is that this part, this section is not removable. So you can't remove it, you can't take it out. So if you're going to use these colors, you're going to have to use it directly from this box, which I found a little tedious. I did not like that. That's one of my gripes about the palette. I wish that they were all three removable like this. That would make it a little bit more usable for the average consumer. Now I'm showing you up close the neutral layer. As you can see, that's the little ribbon on each side that removes the palette from the box itself. And then all the eyeshadows have a little keyhole right there. It's very small, where you can pop each eyeshadow out of the actual tray itself. And I just use a safety pin to pop that out. You can use a thumbtack or any really pointy fine implement, maybe a tweezer or a little fine pair of scissors. And the eyeshadows pop out pretty easily using that method. Just lift them out the palette. So there's a magnet underneath which holds them in place, but you can just pop them out easily. I didn't have a problem removing them. Just be careful that you don't damage the eyeshadow in the process of removing them. Then on the back of each eyeshadow, you'll see the Makeup Forever brand name along with the shade number that's just printed in black ink on the back of these eyeshadows, which I'm sure will wear off over time. It's not embossed or permanently printed on, so you know, just be mindful of that. That might fade away over time. I do find the removable trays really handy. The gripe that I have is that the bottom layer is not removable, and that makes it a little bit tedious. It is decent for travel because you can really carry all three sections. It's not that thick considering there are 3 layers in there, so it's decent for travel. This does not, this is just a magnetic clasp that holds it closed, so it can open in your luggage or something, so be mindful of that. It's still a very secure palette for travel though, and I don't think it's the most practical for everyday use just because it's very bulky and you have to remove layers upon layers to get to the eyeshadows. The shade names aren't printed on the actual trays themselves, so I like to have the shade names printed on the palette, but they do have this little insert which I mentioned before. Keep this handy and keep it in the palette because this will give you the shade numbers as it relates to each of the layers. So that is handy right there. I personally don't like that, so I did something a little bit different, and I'll show you right now how I am going to organize these. I put them all back in the palette the way they were laid out just for the purposes of this video, but for me, I went out and got the actual palettes, these empty palettes from Sephora, and these are $1 each, so they're not going to break the bank. They're not like a Z palette where you're going to spend $20, $30, $40 on a Z palette just to put eyeshadows in. These are $1 each. So these empty eyeshadow palettes come in a trio size, a duo size, and a single size. So you can organize your eyeshadows in singles, doubles, or triples, which I find really convenient for me. And these palettes are really nice. They're really rigid. It has a transparent lid so you can see the colors, what you're pulling out, and then the eyeshadows pop in and out, and there's also a keyhole on the back that you can just pop the eyeshadows in and out of your palette, and it's magnetized to fit your eyeshadows in perfectly. And what I also did, because I am anal like that, I printed out little mini labels from my label maker with the shade number and the shade name, which is actually available on Sephora online. If you check the different numbers, they have a shade name to them. So I printed out the shade number and name, and I'm gonna stick these on the back of the palettes to just really know easily what the shade name is quickly, and I can reference that for you guys when I'm doing tutorials and videos. So the newly reformulated Makeup Forever Artist eyeshadows come in 5 finishes or 5 textures across the eyeshadow range, and I'll just explain them really briefly to tell you what they mean. So when I mention an eyeshadow by the shade number, you'll easily be able to identify what the texture or the finish is, because Makeup Forever cleverly used a letter in as a prefix before the actual number to indicate the finish of the eyeshadow itself. So an M in the eyeshadow number indicates that the eyeshadow finish is matte, and matte means it's a flat, no shine finish. So you're not going to get any sheen, you're not going to get any shine, and mattes are my favorite texture of eyeshadow hands down. And mattes are great for creating dimension because they're flat, they don't reflect light, so you can create depth with different matte shades. And then next up you have metallic shades, which are prefixed with an ME, and the metallic shades are high sheen, high shine, and they look very metallic. So think of the sheen of, say, gold and silver. That's that high shine finish, so that's what the metallic shades will look like. Then you also have S, which stands for satiny shades. So these shades are not very shiny, not very shimmery, but they're not flat mattes. They have more of a sheen to them, and they're very blendable, very smooth, great pigmentation, but they're not going to give you a high frost finish. They're somewhere in between a matte and a frost, where they give you some sheen but not a whole lot of shine. And Makeup Forever also has an iridescent finish, which I think is the step up from satin. So it goes from matte to satin to iridescent to metallic for the levels of shine or high shine that you're gonna find in the eyeshadows. So mattes are no shine, and then the metallics are the high shine eyeshadows. So the iridescent is indicated with an I in the shade name, and the iridescents are more of a sheer shimmery shade. They are nicely frosted, but they're not high shine. They do have a lot of sheen and shimmer to them though, but they are more of, they're not as opaque as metallics, but they do give you that similar shimmery, shiny effect. Then you have diamonds, which are indicated with a D in the shade name, and the diamonds are a little bit different because they have microfine glitter within the eyeshadow themselves. So the eyeshadows are packed with micro shimmer, and these shades can be a little tricky because the shimmer will cause fallout on your cheeks. Now what I found with these shades, as long as you use a press-in motion with them, the shine, the shimmer, the glitter actually sticks to your lid. So most eyeshadows that have glitter in them have a problem with the glitter actually showing up. In this case, I found that the majority of the diamond shades that I have actually do show up the glitter as long as you use a nice base and you press the eyeshadow on. So those are the 5 finishes of the eyeshadow. So we're just going to jump into the swatches now, and I'm just going to use the numbers as reference, and if I can remember the actual shade name, I'll tell you as well. We have the Smoky palette, which has 2 mattes and the rest of them have some level of shine or sheen. And these are definitely more smoky, dark tone hues. So here we have the first row of the Smoky palette swatch. The first shade is M100 Black, which is exactly what it says. It's a matte black shade, and it's a deep, rich black that is great for creating smoky looks or deepening out the outer V. Next up we have the shade D104, which is a diamond shade, and the shade name is Black Diamond, and as you can see, it matches the name perfectly. It's a nice, rich black shade with silver glitter or sparkle throughout. Then we have the shade ME310, which is Fir Tree Green, which is a rich, deep, dark forest green, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Next up we have another diamond shade. This is D320, which is called Golden Khaki, and it actually does match the name. It is a golden khaki shade with shimmer throughout. Then last up we have the shade ME108 Steel, which is a shimmery steel shade. It is more of a medium silver rather than an icy silver shade. And here is the second row of the Smoky palette. The first shade is ME624 Black Gold, and true to its name, it's a rich black shade with golden shimmer. Then we have M618, which is called Espresso, and it is a rich, dark, deep brown shade, matte in finish. Then we have ME930, which is called Black Purple, which is a black and purple shade with some sheen to it. This shade is ME654, which is Cauldron, which is a shimmery bronzy shade. Then we have I606, which is called Pinky Earth, which is a pink toned brown shade. With the neutral layer, which has 4 mattes, as you can see, and then the 6 remaining shades have some level of shimmer or shine to them. And the neutrals are everyday wearable neutrals with some highlight shades and a couple of blend-in shades. So here I swatched the first 5 shades of the neutral palette. This first shade is shade I550, which means it's iridescent, and the shade name is Olive Gray, and it does have a nice taupey undertone, and as you can see from the iridescent shades, they don't come off highly frosted, but they do have a shimmer to them. Next up we have the shade M548, which means it's matte in finish, and this one is called Pink Gray, and it does have a very gray undertone on my skin. I think this would actually work great as a contour shade. This next shade is M536, which means it's matte in finish, and the name of this shade is Milk Tea. It is a nice neutral beigey shade with a strong caramel undertone. Then we have the shade M532, which is Sugar Coated Candy, which is an ivory shade with a touch of peach, and it's matte in finish. And last up in this row we have ME122, which is one of those metallic shades which I told you has a high frost finish, and this shade is called Snow, and it's a shimmery white shade with like a silver flash to it. Here we have the second row of the neutral palette. First up is the shade M636, which is Cappuccino, which is a matte medium tone brown. This would work great for deepening up the crease area. Next up we have the shade I662, which is an iridescent shade, so that means it has some sheen to it, and this is the shade Amber Brown, which does have a nice amber rich hue to it. It's more of a bronzy champagne-y shade. Then we have one of the diamond shades. This is D640, which is Golden Snake, and it is a very taupey shade, but it has that golden flash to it, and again it's one of those diamond shades, so there is a micro shimmer in the eyeshadow. Next up is ME512, which is Golden Beige, which is a very icy champagne shade. It's a very pale champagne shade, as you can see. It's definitely a golden beige shade. Next up we have the shade D868, which is one of those diamond shades with shimmer in it, and it's an icy light pink shade. It looks like it has a white base with pink flash to it. As you move around, you'll see the different shimmer. And then the final layer are the artistic shades, which have a bunch of bright shades, and they are mostly shimmer, satiny, and iridescent shades. And I wanted to point out that these 4 shades, so the purple, the tomato orange shade, the bright pink, and this subdued more coral orange shade, are all blush shades. So they are meant for blush and not actual eyeshadows. And what that pretty much means is that they have some sort of red pigment that hasn't been passed by the FDA for use on the eyes. So be very careful when you use these shades if you use them on the eyes, because they can irritate your skin and cause staining. So here is the first row of the Artist palette swatched. The first shade up is ME400, which is called Buttercup, which is a shimmery metallic yellow shade. Next we have the shade I746 Watermelon, which is exactly that. It's a watermelon corally pink shade. Then we have S852 Neon Pink, which is a bright neon pink with a flash of fuchsia. Then we have S742 Tomato, which some of these shades have the perfect name. This is a nice bright tomato red shade. And then last up is the shade that replaces number 92 eyeshadow. This is I922, and iridescent means it's not as intense in pigmentation, but it's a beautiful shimmery purple shade. So as I mentioned before, these 4 shades here are meant to be used as blush shades. That doesn't mean you can't use them on the eye, but definitely use at your own risk, as the pigments haven't been cleared for use on the eye by the FDA. They do have red tinged pigment there, so it can be irritating to the eye and it will leave a stain behind. As you can see there from me just swatching the colors on my arms, there is a kind of pinky reddish stain left behind. And here we have the final row of the Artist palette. The first shade up is D206 Celestial Blue, which is an icy shimmery blue shade. This one has a little bit of difficulty picking up the color, so you have to build this one up, but you can definitely get great color payoff if you really pack it on. Next we have I340 Lime Green, which is a shimmery lime green shade. It's so gorgeous. It has a great golden undertone. I absolutely love the pigmentation of this shade. Then we have the shade ME304 Emerald, which is a shimmery medium green shade. I wouldn't call it an emerald because I expect an emerald to be a richer shade, but it's a nice metallic green shade. And here we have ME230 Peacock Blue, which is a shimmery blue shade with some green tone to it. So it comes off a little bit teal, but it definitely leans more blue than green. Then last up we have the shade I220 Sapphire, which is a deep, dark, rich blue with a sheen. I applied a lighter, more blended in swatch of the blush shades, and I'm just going to show you how they would look use them as a blush. Definitely use a light hand if you're going to use these as blushes, because as you can see they're very pigmented. This again is the I746 Watermelon shade. This is the S852 Neon Pink shade. This is S742 Tomato. And this is the I922 Purple shade. Now the formula is touted as a gel powder consistency, and I've been hearing that tossed around a lot in the makeup industry these days as far as eyeshadows go, and these I think hit the nail on the head. They do have a very interesting, almost wet texture to them. They feel very slippery, very creamy, and that is due to the high levels of dimethicone, or it's a silicone that's in the formula. It has a serious slip to it, and that gives it that gel type consistency. Now with that you will get great pigmentation, and you actually get great blendability because of that slip. So You do not have to use an eyeshadow primer or base to get the full color payoff from these eyeshadows. They're highly pigmented. They give great color. It's rich color, true to the color that you see in the actual eyeshadow pan. But I will suggest using a synthetic brush for these eyeshadows. So something like a MAC 242, which has synthetic fibers, really works well. The IT Cosmetics brushes also work really well with these eyeshadows because they're synthetic, because the bristles do not absorb as much moisture, so it picks up the eyeshadows really well and spreads it really well. You can still use them with natural hair bristles, especially for blending, but if you want full color payoff, definitely try using them with synthetic brushes. Not that they can't be used with natural hair brushes, it's just you can get better manageability out of the eyeshadows with a synthetic brush. Also, if you want serious pigmentation, serious color payoff, try applying these with your fingers. So if you just want to apply, like I did here, the center of my lid, I put a bronzy shade there. Use your finger to apply that and you will get intense color payoff that you won't believe. Or even a sponge applicator, you'd be surprised at the pigmentation that you get out of these eyeshadows. They are certainly like pressed gel pigments. They are amazing. So I definitely think Makeup Forever hit it out the park with this new formulation for their eyeshadows. And I definitely think they did a great job too of selecting the shades for this collection, this Artist Anniversary palette. The shades are beautiful. They are arranged nicely. You have the smoky shades, the neutral shades, and then the bright artistic shades. I think they did a great job of selecting the shades to include in this palette. The other eyeshadows too, I have a few more that are gorgeous that I will do a separate video doing swatches of those because I don't want to just convolute this video too much. But overall, I think the formula is phenomenal. My favorite finish would be mattes because I love matte shades and I think they did a great job with these mattes. They're nice and smooth and blendable and highly pigmented, and they're not powdery at all. You're definitely going to get some powder because that's just a given with a matte eyeshadow, but they're not overly powdery where they kick up a lot of product when you dip your brush into the actual eyeshadow, and they blend well on your eyes without too much fallout. As long as you use a great brush and a great base, you shouldn't have an issue with too much fallout. I personally didn't have an issue with fallout. The only shades that you're going to run into some fallout with would be the diamond shades. So the shades with the shimmer in them, the micro shimmer. Just really press your brush into the shade, tap off the excess before you apply it to your eyes, and use a nice, good, sticky eyeshadow base to prevent or minimize fallout. The iridescent shades in the palette, the Celestial Blue, that icy blue shade, and this icy crystalline pink shade are a little bit tricky to build up pigmentation. They are not sheer, but they are not the most pigmented, which I think the intention was to make them that way. So I don't think the shades are poor at all. That's just how they were meant to actually be. So those are the only shades that I think have to build up a little bit to get great pigmentation, but overall the pigmentation on these shadows are phenomenal, from the mattes to the metallics to the satins, and the texture is beautiful. They blend really easily together, and that's something that I was interested in checking out because the smoky shades, dark shades, can have some issues with blending out, but I really didn't have any issues blending these at all. They blend together nicely. They blend texture wise together nicely, so a matte with a shimmer with a metallic still blend nicely together whilst retaining their actual individual shades. And they work well with other eyeshadows too. So I really love this palette. I love the eyeshadows. I love everything about them. I think they're definitely a great investment, great addition to my collection. And the only thing I have to say that may be a little bit negative, but I think it's a virtue of the formula, is that the eyeshadows build up a film and I think that has to do with the dimethicone that's in the formula. Dimethicone, it's in your silicone promise. It's a silicone ingredient, and it helps with blendability, it helps with texture, it makes your eyeshadows smoother and slick and blend a little bit better. So they have a lot of that in there, and they can pack in pigments with them to make the rich pigmentation. So because of the formula, or it's just something that comes with the formulation, that it creates a film. And I'll get an up close shot so you can see what I really mean by that. So that film, I'll show you, it shows up great on that green shade and on this blue shade, but that happens, there's this shiny kind of slick finish on the eyeshadows, and that will happen mostly with the metallic shades. I find the matte shades don't have that issue, the diamond shades don't really have that issue, mostly the metallic shades have that issue. And you will see that happen a lot if you go in store and check out eyeshadows. So many people have rubbed their fingers in it that it has this little layer on top that you gotta scrape off, because all the oils in their skin create this film on the top of the eyeshadow. And also, if you use your eyeshadows wet, if you use a wet brush on top, or you add liquid on top of your eyeshadows, it can create that film as well that you have to kind of remove to get the eyeshadow to work again underneath it. Now, you don't have to scrape away the eyeshadow on these. That's not what it creates. It more creates chunks in the eyeshadow. So when you put your brush in and it creates that film, when you go again, you might get little chunks of the eyeshadow that you have to now press and blend out, so it becomes like a chunky pigment. So it's not a deal breaker for me. It's not something really truly negative that you're like, oh my god, don't even bother. No, it's something that's definitely, just by virtue of the formula, it's something that you can work around. It's nothing that damages the eyeshadows and makes them unusable. So just rub your brush a little bit harder and apply the eyeshadows. If you get chunks, just really press to blend those out. I think these eyeshadows are fantastic, and if the formula does do that, that's something I'm willing to accept. So overall, I think this palette is worth it. I think they did a great job selecting colors. If you are a beginner, I truly do recommend this, because you have neutral, smoky colors, and bold colors. This is something that you would treasure in your collection, because it gives you such dimension, such variety, and the bold shades you can use as blush. So I think it's a great palette. Definitely, if you're a makeup enthusiast, this is one of those things that I would say get it if you can. It's limited edition, so you definitely have to pick it up when you can. You can get it at Sephora online, Sephora stores, as well as Makeup Forever boutique. So just search around to find where they have this. I absolutely love mine, and I'm happy I have my hands on it. And like I said, I grabbed a few more shades that I'm gonna do swatches of in an upcoming video, because I'm gonna order a few more because I love them so much. So definitely hit thumbs up if you like this video and the review. I really appreciate it. And below you'll find links to my Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook pages where you can follow me along and we can chat. So yeah, until my next video, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.